what is depreciation? You should have like a nice one-sentence definition of it in your minds. How would you define it? Loss of value. Good. Loss of value. Which should not surprise you because, as you already know about me by now, I'm really into words and what they mean and why, right? So look at what this word looks like, right? DE, when you see that as a prefix on the front of anything like, say, deduct or demote, right? What's that about? Or decrease? It's about things going down, right? Some kind of drop. Things are shifting, right? And then, of course, what's that word in the middle? Where does that come from? Do you recognize it? P-R-E-C. I know it's we've substituted a vowel, which makes it a little harder to recognize. But clearly that comes from price, doesn't it? Which, by the way, is not where it ends, right? Where does price come from? It comes from something which is valuable, namely a prize. Okay, so that's where it comes from. This idea of things that you value, but you're bringing them down. Okay, so to prize something is to value it, which is why a price is its value as a noun. Okay. Now, why are we looking at depreciation under the topic of cars? Why is that important? Why do cars depreciate? You can think of at least two reasons, two main ones. Yep.
Use.
Good. So as they get used, right, they get damaged, they get dings, all that kind of thing, right? So that makes sense. Any other reasons? What if you don't use it all that much? Just leave it in a garage. Does it still depreciate?
Yeah.
It does. Why? Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. So just as things get older, right, often they're going to become less valuable. It's worth mentioning, by the way, they don't always, do they? Right? Not all cars depreciate over time. What kinds of cars don't depreciate? Yeah.
Like really high-end cars.
Yeah, good. So they're kind of like, age, right? If it becomes like an antique, in fact, the older something is, the more value it is. It doesn't depreciate, it appreciates, right? So you got to be careful with that one. But for us, right, we're mostly dealing with and purchasing cars that are going to depreciate, right? Now, you should remember, there are two kinds of depreciation, right? Joe?
Miss Marshall lost the shade. I don't know where I'm going.
Okay. Let me look you up. Lucky you. You're going to 11 empty 2 3, which from memory is in B126.
Alright, thanks.
Okay. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Okay. As we were saying, there are two kinds of depreciation. What are they? They have special names as well. Do you remember what they are?
Linear.
Okay, so you've got linear, right? Or sort of straight. Sorry. Straight line depreciation, right? Which means that every year what's happening to the value of your car? It's just going to lose the same amount. $5,000, $5,000, $5,000, okay? Before we go into a bit more detail on that and remember why, right? What's the other kind if it's not straight line, if it's not linear? Okay, good. So percentage, right? And the other fancy name for it is declining balance, right? Okay, yes, it should be there, but I'm trying to make sure that you really understand it, not just have it there sort of stored away, okay? Now, based on the fact of how these mathematically work, what's our formula for each one? It starts with S for, does anyone remember what the S stands for? Salvage value, good. How do we work it out for straight line depreciation? Okay, good. So you start with your initial value. They usually call it V0, right? So naught as in time, no time has passed, right? Minus, because you're depreciating, minus what? Okay, so whatever constant, I think I just said $5,000, right? Multiplied by however long you've been doing it for, n years, right? So that's fine, right? Percentage or declining balance, right? It works quite differently. S equals, now it still does start with V0, but what happens now? Okay, so we need some brackets in here. What's inside the brackets? Okay, 1 minus, now instead of a D, right? We don't call it D because it's not the same amount every time. It's a percentage, right? A rate. And to the power of n, which we ought to, of course, recognize because really, this is just compound interest in reverse, right? Whoops, that's wrong. we're used to this. Exactly the same kind of thing, right? You've got to make sure you get the connections. Now, quick question. Let's see. This is not within the textbook, but you should know it because this is where you're headed in life, I assume, if you get money and all that. Why would you choose one over another? Like, you can calculate both, but when do you use one and when do you do the other? Do you discuss that at all? Yeah? Okay, so when would you use linear? Okay, so they're going to be decreasing at a constant rate, right? Now, I guess I would ask you this question. If we know that it's decreasing the same amount every year, who would want to do that? What kind of people would want to calculate the depreciation like this? Do you know the answer? Does anyone know the answer?
Would it be dealership?
Ah, okay. So, dealerships is one example, but I want to be a little bit broader than that. Really, and that's a good answer, by the way, really it's any company. Any company. Any large organization that has to work out depreciation for a large number of objects over a large period of time. Okay, here's the reason why. Let's just think about dealerships since that was the example. How many cars do you think an average dealership has access to and has to think about the money for? Ballpark figure? Just picture a dealership in your mind. Like, how many cars do you think that is? Maybe 30 if it's a small one. 100 if it's a big one. And by the way, it's not just the ones that are there that they have access to. There's lots more that they also have to manage the accounts for, right? So maybe you've got, like, say, 100 different cars, okay? And if you think about each of the different cars, they all have different values. Some of them might be, special fancy cars or something like that. But the point is they're all depreciating at different rates, okay? Who has to do that? Who has to work out all of this stuff? Probably, in a few years, some of you guys, if you become accountants, right? There will be a finance department, right? And they maybe hire a few clerical staff, and it's their job to work out for every one of those cars, how much are they going to be worth, right? Now, if they're going to do it this way, it's a pain, it's confusing, it's a lot of clerical work, right? So it's simpler mathematically to do it this way, even though it's more accurate mathematically to do it this way. Okay. So if that's why you would choose linear, why would you choose declining balance? Why would you choose a percentage? This is starting to get more to you guys rather than these. Why would you personally do it that way? Yeah.
Does it decrease far less when you get older?
Okay, so if I think about the life of the car, right? This is what a graph of declining balance looks like, right? And we'll have a look at some of these in your textbook, okay? So clearly, sorry, that shouldn't be an arrow. You start somewhere. Clearly, you're losing all that value at the beginning, okay? So you drop like a rock for these first few years, right? And then it kind of tapers off. Like, you look at this period over here, you don't lose all that much value, right? And interestingly, even though it sounds like where you want to get benefit is over here, it's like, oh, I don't lose too much value. Actually, the reason why you guys and me would choose declining balance is precisely because this drop in value. Why is it actually good to have a drop in value on your records for the things you own? Think about it. Think about all of the maths you've been doing this year and what it applies to. Where might it actually be useful to lose value, depreciate, faster? Why? Why would you want that? Yeah.
For insurance.
Okay, let's think about this. Insurance, the more valuable your stuff is, right? The more you have to pay to insure it. Okay, so there's one factor, right? It is true. It's not the main one. I'll give you a bit of a hand. Tax. We spent a long time looking at tax this year, right? Deductions for tax. What's a deduction? What is a deduction? And can you give me an example? Like, I earn this amount of money, okay? And then I want to say, look, I shouldn't pay tax on all of that, right? I'm gonna knock off some, right? Why? For what reasons would you deduct things from your taxable income? Come on, you know some of them. Think about them.
For work.
For work, fantastic. So for example, suppose I buy a car, right? And I've got a value, and I'm like, look, I drive this for work. I need this car, so you shouldn't tax me on that income, right? I had to buy that car in order to do my job, all right? Now, therefore, see this big drop in value, okay? This depreciation, you can claim that as a tax deduction, right? So obviously, you and me, we want this number to be as big as possible, right? The more I've lost, the more I've had to expend to keep this car, right? The more I can claim off my tax, right? So why do people do this? Makes work easier, right? Why do people do this? So that they can get a bigger tax refund at the end of the financial year, okay? And almost certainly this is what you will do, or you'll get your accountant to do if they're any good, okay?